Hey guys, welcome to the project LL.M Interview Series. Today we have with us Shreya Munoth. Shreya graduated from NLU Jodhpur in 2013. Then she worked in Shardul, Amarchand and Mangaldas for 3 years before going on to do her BCL at the University of Oxford on the Chevening Scholarship. In this interview, we will ask Shreya how her journey has been and we will ask us to share her some valuable advice. Thank you, Shreya, for joining us.
It's my pleasure, Bhartindu.
Shreya, I want you to start with the fact that you worked in Shardul, Amarchand and Mangaldas for 3 years. I want you to share with us how your experience was in working in a top tier firm.
My experience at SAM was fantastic. It was 3 years of a lot of learning. The learning curve was really steep. I got to work on a lot of exciting matters. I worked with some fantastic people, and so overall my experience was nothing short of incredible.
So, how is it that this eventually led to a master's?
The plan to do a master's was always present since law school. In 4th and 5th year, I was even more certain that I wanted to apply for a master's, but the only thing that was playing on my mind was the financial aspect of it.
Yeah.
So I decided to maybe work for a bit so that I was financially secure before I went to do a master's, and in the chance that I didn't get a scholarship, I would be secure enough to go for a master's anyway. So that was why I decided to work before applying for my master's. And the other thing is that I was considering that I would be eligible for a lot more universities and a lot more scholarships if I had substantial work experience.
Right.
So these were the two reasons that motivated me to work before applying for my master's.
So Shreya, this is the line of thought which you had when you were in college and you decided to work. Now you've joined the organization, you work for 3 years, and I understand that once one becomes a working professional, the lifestyle changes, the priorities change, you start earning money. So I want to understand from you what the thought process is when someone leaves a lucrative job and decides to go to study again.
I guess that the thought process is twofold. One is that you're financially secure in going for a master's, as I mentioned.
Yeah.
And the second is that you know if you have to take a loan to go for your master's, you know you have something to come back to. So that way I don't think it's too much of a risk in leaving a lucrative job. In fact, it's an advantage once you have a fairly comfortable
Essentially you are more secure and you have a backup plans in order instead of someone who's going immediately after graduating and then if they face some challenges. So compared to that, one has a certain cushion.
Definitely. And the other advantage that working gives you as opposed to going straight from college is that you're a lot clearer on what you want to study.
Right.
Because you've looked at the practical aspects of things as well. So I think that is quite helpful.
So Shreya, the automatic next question is, you went to Oxford. So why is it that you chose Oxford and where else did you apply?
So when I was applying, I had a very hectic work schedule. So time was of essence.
Right.
I was really pressed for time, and I knew that I had to effectively manage my time in the application process, which is very time consuming, as we all know. So I decided to limit the number of universities I was applying to.
Yes.
And I also decided to focus on colleges in the UK because the application process is fairly straightforward.
Right, that's correct.
As opposed to applying through the LSAC, as you need to do for US colleges.
Right.
So I picked Oxford, Cambridge and Harvard.
Alright.
I picked Harvard because I didn't have to apply through LSAC and I could apply directly. So I picked these 3 colleges. The other reason why I decided to focus on colleges in the UK was that it's financially more affordable to apply to colleges in the UK and study in the UK, and I would be eligible for a lot more scholarships in the UK.
Right.
So I decided to pick more colleges in the UK than the US.
So Shreya, what I'm picking up from your answer, other than the financial aspect, is that once you're a working professional, it also becomes important how long or how time consuming the application process is, whether you will be able to do justice to your application, because if you're putting in a half-baked application, it's not worth it.
Completely, Bhartindu. My thought process was, instead of submitting 10 applications that I haven't given enough time to, I'd rather focus on 3 applications and apply to 3 universities.
So Shreya, you did the BCL course from the University of Oxford. One thing which people generally ask me is, whether this BCL course is equivalent to a master's, is it a LLM degree, LLM level course. So that's one thing which I'd like to learn from you. And the other thing is, what is the course structure which you have at the University of Oxford?
So it is a postgraduate course. The reason it's called the Bachelor of Civil Law is because of one of the Oxford antiquities. It's been called that for the last 700-800 years.
Right.
And the reason they don't call it an LLM is because it differs from a regular LLM in the sense that we have a tutorial system in Oxford. And I talk more about the tutorial system when I'm talking about the course structure. So in Oxford, you only pick 4 courses that you study throughout the year.
Alright.
And you pick those 4 courses out of more than 40 options. Those 4 courses are assessed through written examinations at the end of the year. So you don't have examinations at the end of every term.
Okay.
And you only do 4 courses.
Right.
You can opt out of one of the courses by picking a dissertation option. And the only course that doesn't have a written examination is the course of jurisprudence and political theory, where you hand in written essays.
Alright.
3 essays in lieu of the exam.
So Shreya, can you tell me a little bit more about the tutorial system?
Tutorials are where you have a group of 3 to 4 students sit with the professor of that particular course and you hand in an essay in advance.
Right.
And everyone discusses all of the essays in great detail.
Alright.
And you have 4 to 5 tutorials in every course throughout the year.
Right, I see. Shreya, I want you to share with us what it takes to get into the University of Oxford, because these universities, Oxford and Cambridge, are ones which primarily people always have them on the top of their list. So what do you think is required for one to make it here?
So I don't think that there is something specific for either Oxford or Cambridge apart from what other universities look at. The only thing that Oxford is definitely particular about is grades. So they do look at your rank in your class. Right. And I think that's the only difference between what is required for an Oxford Masters as compared to any other Masters.
So Shreya, now let's talk about the application process a little bit. The Oxford application is a little different from other universities. So could you shed light on this?
So the Oxford application requires just a 300-word personal statement.
Right.
And they very candidly mention on their website that the personal statement is not going to be what your application is solely judged on. So it is not the most important part of your application.
Right.
And given that it's just 300 words, you need to very briefly narrate your academic and professional experience, your reasons for applying to Oxford, and your areas of interest. The most crucial part of the application is a 2,000-word written essay that you need to submit. And that 2,000-word essay could be on anything that you have researched on or worked on, but it needs to be thorough and complete within the 2,000 words. So it's not advisable to just extract something from something that you've previously published, and it's not complete.
Right. So that 2,000-word essay should be a complete piece within itself.
That's right.
And what about the letters of recommendation? Because this website says that they prefer 3 academic recommenders. How did you deal with this situation?
So while they prefer 3 academic references, 2 academic references are mandatory, and the 3rd reference is optional, and it could be either academic or professional. So what I chose to do was I submitted 2 academic references and I submitted 1 professional reference because I thought that would reflect both my academic and professional work.
Right. So was it challenging for you to reach out to your academic referees, considering that it had already been 3 years since you graduated?
I don't think that was such a hassle because I had been in touch with my academic referees after graduation, and it was always at the back of my mind that I was planning to apply, and I had informed my referees when I was leaving college that I would get in touch with them in the future, so it wasn't such a hassle.
Right. So I would want you to share some information about the University of Oxford or the BCL course, which is generally not out there and you think is worth sharing with the viewers and people would be happy to know.
So in Oxford, you have 3 terms, academic terms, over a year, which are the Michaelmas term, Hilary and Trinity.
Alright.
And they're only 8-week terms. So you basically only have classes and seminars for 8 weeks. And then you have a 6-week break before the next term begins. And that 6 week is basically to catch up on all of the reading that you may have missed So that is one way in which it's very different from other universities.
Right.
The other difference with the University of Oxford is the collegiate system.
Alright.
So not only are you a part of the University of Oxford, you're also a member of a particular college.
Okay.
So when you're filling out your application form,
Yes.
you have the option of indicating which college you would like to join.
Okay.
And there are around 38 colleges in Oxford. And one way to go about picking a college, if you want to indicate a preference, you don't have to indicate a preference, but if you do want to indicate a preference, is to go through what scholarships you're eligible for. Because there are certain scholarships that colleges hand out, and they require that you pick that college as your college of first preference in the application. So it's good to do your research when you're picking out a college.
And the right way to do this would be go to the university website, check it thoroughly.
Exactly. All of the information is quite easily accessible, and they specify whether you need to indicate a college preference or not. So that's
so you spend time on the website, make sure you read everything so that you are well informed and you don't regret anything later. That makes a lot of sense. And I think the University of Oxford website is one of the few websites which are very exhaustive in terms of content.
Yes, you don't need to refer to third sources, and the university website is quite exhaustive.
Shreya, now I'd like to move on to the scholarship questions. So you received the Chevening scholarship. I want you to share the application process and the requirements about this scholarship.
So the Chevening application is due sometime in the first week of November. The application is fairly straightforward. The requirements are that you have 2 years of work experience, and the 2 years of work experience could be calculated including your internships as well. So that's helpful for students who want to apply right out of college as well. And that you apply to at least 3 universities in the UK, and that you make a commitment to come back and work in India.
So is this scholarship, Shreya, a need-based scholarship, a merit-based scholarship, and also how lengthy is the application process in terms of maybe the statement of purpose or the number of questions you have to answer?
It's a merit-based scholarship. They don't look at your financial standing when you apply for the scholarship.
Right.
And the application doesn't require you to submit a statement of purpose. You just have to answer 4 questions. And the questions are on your leadership skills, your networking abilities, on the 3 colleges that you have picked in the UK, and what your plans are on completing your masters.
People who are making a statement of purpose for the primary university application, does any of that portion help them with the scholarship questions, or they will be standalone questions which you will need to brainstorm on?
I think 2 of the questions might be similar to your university personal statements, because you have to mention why you're picking the universities that you have picked and what your postmaster's plans are, which are covered in your personal statement. So that's helpful, whereas your leadership and networking skills are slightly different from what you would focus on in your personal statement.
I see.
So that's the difference.
So what about other scholarships, Shreya? Did you apply elsewhere other than the Chevening scholarship?
I did apply for a lot of other scholarships. There is the Commonwealth Scholarship, which is also for universities in the UK.
That's great.
And there are a lot of departmental and college scholarships in Oxford. So I applied to a lot of those. Some of those scholarships you don't need to do anything apart from just indicating that you're interested in those scholarships.
I see.
Some scholarships require an additional essay or an additional statement of some sort. And so those were primarily the scholarships that I focused on. Apart from that, there are obviously a lot of Indian scholarships, such as the NLACs and PART scholarships as well.
And all this information is available on the website?
All of the information about the Oxford scholarships is very easily accessible on the university website, and about the Indian scholarships, I think that it's available online as well.
There's another question which I'd like to ask you. The scholarship process often starts quite early, and there are deadlines of universities which are later. So you mentioned that the Chevening scholarship deadline was somewhere in November, and if I'm not wrong, the Oxford University deadline comes somewhere in the early Jan. So how does one, strategize so that they don't miss out on any opportunities?
So the biggest advantage a person can have while applying for an LLM is starting the process well in advance. Because there are a lot of administrative things that you need to get out of the way, such as writing an English proficiency exam or getting your university to process your transcript, etc. So the earlier on you start the process, the more comfortable you are anyway. That way you're sure that you will not miss any scholarship deadlines, because as you mentioned, the Chevening scholarship is quite early, as well as the Commonwealth Scholarship is due sometime in October or November. So that's an important consideration to keep in mind while you're applying, and not look only at the timelines of university applications but also scholarship deadlines.
Because usually what happens is people start thinking about scholarships when they start applying. So that is also something which you should start thinking before you indulge in the process.
Exactly. It's quite useful to think of both simultaneously.
So Shreya, what is it that's keeping you busy these days?
After graduating from Oxford, I worked at the Women's Legal Centre in Cape Town, and I was funded by the Bonnevero Institute of Human Rights and the Oxford Pro Bono Publico. The Women's Legal Centre is an African feminist legal organisation that works on issues of women's rights, and the plan is to continue working on similar issues in India.
Shreya, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here, and I'm sure that these tips which you have shared will be really helpful to those students who are looking to target universities in the UK and especially Oxford. And I look forward to maybe roping you in sometime again for some other conversation.
Most certainly, Bharti.
Thank you, Shreya. Such a pleasure.
My pleasure.